I frequently get mistaken as a Canadian, so you'll recognize the accent, no mistake there. North Dakota has a long border. We have the Grand Forks District, which houses one of the regional operations, and in a previous life, I was the Attorney General responsible for running something called the Bureau of Criminal Investigation, which held on a regular basis intel sessions all across the state of North Dakota. On the border, Royal Canadian Mounties were invited, the local Canadian officials, Border Security, Border Patrol. So I want to give a fairly accurate picture of the great collaboration and work that's being done on the northern border. But with that said, we've taken our eyes off the northern border. It was painful during the discussion on immigration reform when I tried to take some of the discussion to the northern border only to be shut down in terms of resources, which is why Kelly and I got together to basically introduce a piece of legislation saying, let's look at what the challenges are. Now, just a couple questions. The refugees that come get a permanent resident card, correct? And that permanent resident card, if you're going to come into the United States, would require a visa application. Is that correct, Dr. Dawson? So on the point of entry, if in fact that is a Syrian or a refugee from a country that we think may have radicalized that person before they entered the Canadian refugee system, that person would not be given entry into the United States unless they went through the visa application process.
That's correct, and it would be U.S. officials that would make that determination.
That's correct. So they would look at any information. And so as we're talking about visa waivers, and obviously one of the great gaps that we found in our security is the visa waiver program. Every panelist who has come before us who's talked about the refugee radicalization and has basically said, that is a process that's long enough, it is robust enough that that is not something somebody who wants to do harm will do. They will find a way to get in under a visa waiver program. And so it's good to hear that the Canadian officials now are undergoing the same kind of scrutiny that we're looking at. So Dr. Dawson, can you tell me what that visa waiver, the equivalent visa waiver program is in Canada? What are you guys doing? If you obviously are part of the visa waiver program, 51 countries, let's say you had somebody who wanted to come to study in Canada or said they wanted to or came on a wish to be a tourist, they qualified, if they're French, for a visa waiver, right? Or to not require a visa. What are you doing now that would be a comparable increased security provision like we did with the visa waiver program?
I'm going to defer that question to possibly Mr. Mammon as an expert in.
If you're a French national, a British national, you just hop on a plane and come to Canada.
And you guys haven't changed that system?
No, we have a list of countries that are visa exempt. Those are usually friendly countries, countries that are more developed countries, richer countries, because we make the assumption that a person coming from that country is welcome and is going to return to that country because there's no economic reason to overstay and work here.
And that's one of the concerns that I have. I mean, let's take the refugee, same scenario here. Who's more likely to want to come to Canada and then find access to the United States? Right. Somebody who comes in as a refugee or somebody who came in with a visa waiver. Right. And is Canada looking at doing something like we did, which is saying, look, if you've been, in Syria, if you've been in Iraq within the last 5 years, you actually have to apply for a visa? Right.
So we don't really have that system. What the ETA system, I understand, is going to be, of course, I have no experience with it because it hasn't been implemented yet.
It's brand new. Yeah.
But the idea is that when a person comes to the border, like when I used to work at the airport, you're seeing them for the first time, you're sort of caught off guard. You look at their passport, you do whatever checking you can, and you've got to move them along. I mean, you can't keep people held up all day. So the ETA program is going to require you to register online, and hopefully that'll give the Canadian authorities
Some advance notice.
some advance notice that this person's coming. Maybe we'll check with our American partners and say, hey, do you have anything on this? And maybe it'll happen electronically or manually, I'm not sure.
We'll probably follow up with the Canadian officials, because maybe isn't good enough for me. I want to
Right.
know exactly what that means. Is that just a step that you think will be a deterrent from somebody coming because they think they might get caught? Or is that something where you're actually going to scrutinize the people who come to the country?
I don't think it's going to be a deterrent. It's going to give you a little bit more time to think things through. Why would I be deterred? I'll go on my computer, I'll put in my name and my passport.
Well, but if
number.
you think that you have a record somewhere where actually you could trace back bad behavior,
Right, but most people, if you take a look at even the 9/11 situation, no one had negative records. Most people who are going, I believe that people who have negative records are less of a threat to a country for a major terrorist attack because they're easily detectable. A person who has a clean record, that's the person
who's going to be.
who's going to make problems.
No, I get that. I'm just saying, that's one of the fallacies of all this, that we're going to know for sure whether in fact somebody is intending to do harm, basically looking at biometrics, basically looking at all of the advanced data. And so that's our concern. And then the point becomes, what happens at the border? We know, I sat down with a county sheriff from Minnesota. The same situation Kelly was telling me that's in New Hampshire. It's wooded. Anyone can walk across the border. I flew Senator Carper up to the northern border, and people, farm around the border lines. It's very porous. But I also want to make one final point, which is because we are dealing with a neighbor that is trusted, that culturally is similar, it is not similar in that way to the southern border. We have an opportunity to double force by working closely with our Canadian neighbors. We're doing that in Portal. We're doing that in Grand Forks and Pembina. But we need more people, and we need more resources if we are going to have situational awareness on the border. And so thank you for your work. You're welcome anytime in our district. Officer Mandel, we'd love to put you in Portal. If you don't know where that is, it's next to Montana. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman.